This is just a very brief rundown of sort of some of the highlights of the year in the garden. And I thought would open on this rather lovely photo of the aloe bed from April this year, which was taken by the photographer Richard Bloom, who is the former International Garden Photographer of the Year, and he came to photograph Sparoza on the Orthodox Easter weekend. And I'll show you some more photos of his a little bit later in the presentation. We are expecting them to be in Gardens Illustrated in probably either March or April this year. So I'm going to start off with rainfall because it is the big issue that we're all facing at the moment. And also in the past, I've been leaving it until the last slide, and I think it's rather a boring way to end. So we'll have a boring way to begin. But this shows you, the blue is the rainfall that we had for this past year, from September 2022 to August 2023. We're significantly down on the average rainfall, over 100 millimeters less than we would expect to see in a good year. And the green line that you see on the graph is the 10-year average, and the blue line is this past year's rain. And it gives a really, I think, quite a stark illustration of how we're not getting the deep soak that you would want to see in the autumn. So basically no rain in September and October, and then November getting up to where you would expect it, and then a very dry December. And so it's been a tricky year in terms of a hot, dry winter. And we're very, very fortunate, actually, because I was starting to get very worried in March, as you can see from the graph, when we had 15 millimeters of rain in March, when we should have been getting 55, 60. But we were incredibly lucky that we had a wetter and very cool, a record cold April. And as a result, when I thought our spring would finish in March, we had this amazing display in April, which just seemed to go on forever. It was spectacular. The temperature didn't get above 20 degrees, and it meant that you had breathtaking displays of wildflowers. And we were very fortunate for the two big photo shoots that we had in the garden. It meant that everything had held on when we'd anticipated that it would actually all have gone over pretty quickly. And of course, we had Cerberus, which anyone who's living in the Mediterranean will have felt the full force of. One of the first heat waves to be named, I believe. And we had nearly 2 weeks of 40-degree weather in July, and then more incredibly hot rain in August. And just as I was starting to despair and seeing all the plants looked as though they were about to die, we had wonderful early rain in September, over a third of last year's annual rainfall in early September. So we're very, very fortunate. And this is just to give you an idea of the craziness of the past 3 years. Thank you. No, that's perfect. So the craziness of the past 3 years, the golden line here is the average rainfall that we would expect to see over a sort of 10, 12-year period. And then the spikes, the blue is this past year, the green is the year before, and the grey is the year 2020 when I first came. And so again, this sort of unpredictability in terms of when we've actually been receiving the rain. The one thing that's you can see on the graph smoothed out is that we're seeing a trend for wet Junes, which is quite interesting. And June was the third wettest month of last year. So quite an interesting thing to recognise that this is becoming a trend in the weather that we're seeing in Attica. So last year started really well with the arrival of Martina Galati. And Martina is a really wonderful landscape architect and artist. And I was very fortunate to have her as my assistant here from October until early July. And she was just a delight to have around. And From the early autumn, we started to work away pruning and tidying, and managed to get an awful lot done. This is the cleaning of the pools, which was a huge job. And we managed to persuade the wonderful Stavros, who you can see standing there with Martina. He works for the Demos, and he very kindly used his Demos crane to help us remove the typha, so that we didn't have to empty the pools of water and get in to do it all by hand. And what he did in half a day would have taken us days and days, maybe even a week. So we're very, very grateful to Stavros for his help. And the aquatic fern that you can see in both the larger image and also in the image to the top right is Salvinia molesta, which is an aquatic fern that is our biggest problem in the pools. But we've been clearing it, and it's now looking rather nice. So with lots of work, the pools are proving to be manageable in a way that I was worried that they weren't. And we're still having problems with the water levels. We're not receiving enough rainfall to keep them properly topped up. This is pretty much the highest the pools have been the whole time that I have been at Sparoza over the past 3 years. And you can see where the overflow is in the image. And I believe they used to get up to the overflow most years. So it's definitely something that is going to be an issue, I think, in the future. And in November and December, we had a really wonderful olive harvest for the first time in a while. And it was a fantastic group effort with lots of the volunteers coming in. You can see Frossa and Miranda in the photo. And we managed to pick 60 kilos of olives, which isn't a lot, but for a small number of trees and unpruned trees wasn't bad. And the results were a fruity, light olive oil, which can definitely, there's room for improvement, but it's very nice. And unfortunately this year, because we have had so little rain, there isn't a single olive on a single tree, but it has meant that we've taken the advantage of not having to worry about the harvest to do a lot of pruning. And hopefully that will renovate the trees and mean that we'll get some higher yields in future years. Lots of tree work was done around December time as well. So this is Konstantinos that you can see at the top of the enormous eucalyptus. And he very stoically took out all the dead wood in the tree that was starting to become a major problem. And there is a reason why they're known as widow makers. These branches, very large branches, die back, and then with the strong winds that we get here, they can come out and be quite dangerous. So Konstantinos went through the entire tree and took out all the dead wood, and is looking much better. And on the right here, you can see a before and after. This was a very, very sad day and a difficult decision to take out one of Jackie Turret's original trees. This was her small-leafed elm, the Ulmus parvifolia. And unfortunately, it had been looking sick the whole time I'd been here. And I eventually took the decision that it needed to come out. We've collected all the seedlings around it so that there are children of it, and we'll find another place. But the really great thing about the decision is that it's meant there's been so much more light for the med plants around it. And as a result, the shrubs in that area are looking much healthier. And yeah, it's been a good opportunity for new planting. And in December, January, I designed and launched a website for Sparoza. So this, it was a difficult decision. We tried to run it through the Mediterranean Garden Society website, but the reason I needed it was in order to have an automated booking system so that I wasn't having to have an email correspondence with every single person that wanted to visit the garden. And it has been wonderful from my perspective. Because all you have to do is go to book your visit, and I get sent an automated message telling me that someone is going to come to the garden and at 10:30 on whatever date. And it has been transformative. So it's definitely there's room for improvement, I think, but as a sort of a very basic interface that gives people information about the garden and enables people to book, it's been really wonderful. And here, this is the 1st of January. And the reason I put this in was it was the first annual flower count for the garden for the 1st of January. And I have plagiarized the idea from Tresco Abbey Gardens, and every 1st of January they count every plant flowering in their garden, and they have over 20,000 species of plant. So I think, seeing as we have about 1,000, we're not doing too badly with I counted 117 different plants flowering on the 1st of January, and Tresco usually have about 300. So I think we're doing rather well, actually. And something that we can add to and monitor as a sort of an interesting way of seeing how the garden is doing, and also how climate change and rainfall are affecting the flowering times of different plants. For example, the Dipcardi serotinum, the brown bluebell that you can see in the top right, that has been flowering and is going over currently. So that's mid-November, and usually it's flowering in January. So it's interesting to see how different rain patterns and heat are affecting the different plants. And this was early February. So 3rd year running, we have had really, really heavy snow. So we were very, very fortunate this year that the snow was fluffy and the temperature went up really quickly. So it meant that we had a day of snow and then it thawed. In the past, it sat around, and the weight has meant that there's been a lot of damage to trees. There was minimal damage. And also, over the past 2 years, I've been sort of strategizing for how we can cope with snow damage. And Martina and I had set about before January to cut back all the shrubs, to create a sort of tighter framework. And so there wasn't lots of damage to the plants, and it worked incredibly well. So it felt like a real victory, actually. And yes, we just, day after, we moved straight on. So it was fantastic. This is the nursery as it currently is. We've had 2 plant sales now in a row, the one that just came and the one before it, that have seen record sales. And we're constantly trying to increase the number of plants available, thinking about the garden as a large stock bed, basically, so that all the unusual things in the garden can be propagated and made available to Attica members of the MGS and other MGS members visiting from all over the world. And it's working really well. And yeah, we're just trying to constantly add to the stock and to propagate plants that are taken from cuttings in the wild or seeds from the wild, so that they're unusual things that you're not going to be able to find in a normal nursery, and that are special and exciting and highly drought tolerant. So. And this year we've been experimenting with different lectures. So we've got 3 of the 4 lectures we gave here. So this is Lefteris thariotis, talking about the flora of Australia, Mediterranean flora of Australia. And then Panagiotis Trigas, who was talking to us about the flora of Helmos. And then we were incredibly lucky that Yorgos Svikas agreed to come and talk to us on the 1st of July about his career. And he was talking to Miltos about his life in botany, basically. And it was, well, for me personally, very, very special to meet him and to hear him talking about his life in flowers. And we also had Thomas Doxiadis giving a wonderful talk about his work at the Ellenicon, which you can view on the Mediterranean Garden Society's YouTube channel. So this is Martina painting in the garden. And during her time in the garden, she did a very, very beautiful plant journal. So she was sitting in the garden painting her favourite things throughout the seasons. And we decided that it would be rather a nice idea to share her sort of very beautiful, highly stylized painting techniques as a workshop. And so in April, we had a really fantastic day where Martina explained her technique, her use of gouache, colour theory, and people were dotted throughout the garden painting primarily bearded irises, but a few people tried to have a go at the aloes and phlomis and other things, and it was enormous fun, and everyone managed to produce something beautiful, and we're hoping to do lots more of these in the future. And in, I think it was mid-April, we had Vogue again, and so this is our second Vogue cover in the past 2 years, and we're very fortunate to have the famous Greeks and the photographer Johann Sandberg to come and photograph the two of them around Sparoza. It was a freezing cold day, so she was very brave to be out on the veranda in her kimono, but it was really wonderful, and we've had a lot of very positive feedback and lots of inquiries about the garden on the back of the Vogue shoot. These are a few more photos. Roger and Mole managed to make it into the photo shoot. And then the week after Vogue came, we had Richard Bloom, who's a former winner of International Garden Photographer of the Year, and he came to photograph the garden for Gardens Illustrated. And I was amazed to watch him in the garden. He was here for 3 days and all different lights, and these are some of his photos. They're not published yet, and so I hope I'm not doing the wrong thing by sharing them with you, but I think he's managed to capture the beauty of April in the garden, and the light is particularly lovely. But it's the one thing I thought was particularly interesting about them is the difference between, these are all in the irrigated part of the garden around the house, and then when you see the dry areas, so this is the hillside, you realise quite how dry the year had been up till this point. So this is also the Derek's garden and the dry bed, and then the Frigganer. So you can see that all the annuals are dying back, and but still lots of beautiful colour from the lavenders and the aloes and the phlomis. So these will probably be published in either March or April, Gardens Illustrated next year. And this is to sort of illustrate that we've been trying really hard to collect seeds and cuttings from things in the wild and to bring them back into the garden and into the nursery. So the photo on the left is me and Martina on Seraphos collecting Euphorbia dendroides seed from some of the most spectacular Euphorbia dendroides I've ever seen around the former mines in Seraphos. They're just absolutely spectacular. And the top image on the right is a very lovely form of Helichrysum metallicum, subspecies italicum, which is now propagated. We took it from cuttings and it's now available in the nursery at Sparoza. And the lower image shows the very wonderful, very late fruiting fig. It fruits in October, and it sits on the edge of Iphigenia's tomb at the Temple of Ravrona. And so I've been propagating that as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow up into a beautiful tree at Sparoza with October figs. And this is the summer, brutally hot, but still lots of beauty in the shapes of the evergreen, rosemaries, olives, Parkinsonia, amazing. But it was a very, very fierce summer with 40-degree temperatures in July and August, sort of prolonged, and lots of fires all over Athens. But we were very fortunate that we had early September rain, and this is what happened. So amazing, over 100 millimeters of rain in early September. And I've never seen the cyclamen graecum like it at Sparoza. Sally always said that on a good year, it was breathtaking. But this is the first year I've seen it looking like this. And just carpets of pink everywhere. And truly, truly astonishing. This is at the top of the garden by underneath the carob grove, where there are some olives as well. And then the Drimia maritima, or Drimia numidica, if you're using the new name, the sea squills that are all through the Frigana. And they were, again, I've never seen them like this. They were spectacular. And the Amaryllis belladonna, the naked ladies below it. And 2023 is sort of a special year because it is the 40th anniversary since the death of Jackie Tyrwhitt. So it's 40 years since the Goulandris owned the property. And we were very fortunate that Grange Park Opera contacted me and said they'd love to bring a group of their friends and trustees to Sparoza. And could they bring a harpsichordist? And so this is what you see in this image. It was a sort of intimate concert for 45 people with Yasinus, the amazing harpsichord player. And it was very moving, actually, because as many of you will know, one of Jackie's main things that she wanted Sparoza to be was a place for concerts. And I don't believe since her death, there has been a concert held here. So to see Sparoza used in the way that she had intended it, with live music and particularly sort of chamber music. I mean, this is how, you know, harpsichords would have been played in very intimate domestic surroundings. So it was very special, and we're in contact now. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to have more concerts and we can invite lots of members of the society to enjoy this incredible music, which we had William Byrd and all sorts. So it was a very, very special afternoon. And Alex Hobson. Alex is the new assistant who's currently at Sparoza at the moment. He's a Greek-American and has just been wonderful. He's been here for just over a month now, and we've been doing lots of heavy work across the hillside and the Frigana, lots of olive pruning in anticipation of more snow this year to try and thin out the branches so that the weight of the snow doesn't damage the trees, and also to hopefully increase cropping of the olives. But you see Alex in the hillside on the left, and then we very recently went to the Peloponnese for seed collecting and looking at wildflowers. And the three of us, Lefteris Thariotis, me and Alex, which you can see in the looking through the hole of one of the Menelaus plane trees, we are going to be spending the next few weeks doing a huge program of planting at Sparoza. Unfortunately, the crazy heat and drought of last year meant that some of the new plants that were put in last year didn't make it. And so we're going to be doing a program of renewal, and it's very exciting. And this is where we are at the moment. This was last week. So this is our amazing new chipper that Jill bought for us, and doing bonfires of lots of the prunings. So it's been a really good start to the year, and we're looking forward to lots more exciting work with planting. And that's it from me.